Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Faith. This is Faith's Horror Corner, and today we're going to be talking about a very big staple of this YouTube channel, horror itself. So, I ran a poll on my Twitter that asked what video you guys wanted to see for this week, and what won is actually me just talking about what got me into the horror genre and sort of my history with horror. So, next week we're going to continue the Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's Part 3, but for today, I'm just going to talk with you guys. It's been a little while since I've done a video like that, actually, so it could be fun. So, I grew up in a pretty Christian household. Not the levels of culty, you know, there's a reasonable and unreasonable. It was like in the middle. So, I couldn't read or watch Harry Potter until I was a teenager. It was one of those type of situations. So I really wasn't exposed to horror much as a child, except for it was portrayed as something pretty kind of ungodly, not really a good idea to get into. You know, obviously when you're a kid, you hear, oh, you shouldn't be interested in this stuff, you're going to be interested in it. It's just how it is. It's like that saying, strict parents raise sneaky kids or something like that. So, when I was around 10 or 11, I think I was around 10 or 11, there was this Christian horror movie that my parents let me watch because it was PG, and it was sort of like the Ghost Hunter TV show, except they were hunting a paranormal demon in it's an old abandoned hospital. That's how those things always are. And I watched it, and it was okay because it was kind of spooky for a PG Christian movie. They didn't overdo all the Christianity stuff, even though it was, you know, moral of the story, don't F with demons, which even as an atheist, I can agree with that now. But, so that was my first sort of introduction. I was really into Dracula when I was younger, and I mean really into Dracula, because my parents were okay with things like Frankenstein and Dracula, you know, classic horror. The classic horror monsters, they were okay with that stuff. Which is funny, because I'm honestly not that big into classic horror now. By that I mean things like Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, monster kind of movies aren't really my thing anymore, but I was huge on vampires, oh my god. I liked Twilight a little bit when I was younger, I'm not gonna lie. It was just people I was surrounded with, but not those kind of vampires. I mean, I had a bust of Dracula that I got from the dollar store around Halloween, and I had it as room decor for 4 or 5 years, so I think that kind of gives you an idea. Also, because I'm so pale, I've always gotten a lot of vampire jokes. I've been told that I look like a character from Twilight, so I just kind of embraced it. So that was my start. It was monster movies, even though I was never super into it. It was just the concept of Dracula I thought was awesome. And then I moved on to the Christian horror movie that was sort of like, you know, Ghost Hunter type movies. And then I was old enough that I was allowed to monitor my own media, and I didn't have to go through my parents for everything. So I think I will admit fully that I pirated most of the horror movies that I've watched. Won't say whether I still do that or don't for legal reasons, but so I think I pirated the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was one of the first actual horror movies I watched on my own, and Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched it on a little iPod, like the second generation. Hardly worked. Didn't even have a camera. Couldn't use the YouTube app because it was outdated. Couldn't update the new iOS, so shocker, I got that to actually run, but so that was my introduction into real horror, and I thought, you know, this is cool, but I also thought, ooh, this is something I shouldn't be watching, because they're saying the F word, you know, I was one of those kids, but I kept watching it anyways, because I was just so, you know, everyone becomes desensitized to certain things after a bunch of exposure, like how, for instance, I remember in the early 2000s, it was more of a shocker if someone, you know, did the deed on TV, and now it's like, holy hell, that is just porn. And we're used to it. It's like, we don't think about it anymore. For me, horror was kind of a shocker. I had a bunch of shock factor because I wasn't used to those sort of things. But now I'm really desensitized to things like, for instance, my favorite Saw movies are my favorite horror movie series. So, as you can see, I'm sort of not shocked by that kind of stuff anymore. So I kind of started watching it more because it was like, oh, this is something I should be watching, and then I really got into it. And for me, I've always really liked slasher horror in particular. Like I said, I'm kind of desensitized to that stuff now, so it's not really a shock factor thing. But I think that horror is sort of good when it doesn't take itself too seriously. When horror takes itself too seriously, it loses the pure ridiculousness that I think is part of what makes horror so fun, because it's not normally everyday type stuff. Anyways, off topic. And then when I was around 13, I had my creepypasta phase. And for the record, I still listen to creepypasta sometimes. I do listen to a bunch of narrations. I listen to smaller narrators, bigger narrators. I like the ones with the ridiculously long titles, like I bought a toilet off of eBay and now it's come to eat me alive. Things like that. Oh man, I click on those. But I was into like Jeff the Killer, Eyeless Jack. I think I started to get into Bloody Painter, but now I don't remember anything about that one. The little girl, that Sally story. I was really into the fandom. I watched the music videos where people put like fan art together and then they post it all on YouTube with a bunch of very copyrighted music, and you just cross your fingers and go, you hope you don't get sued for uploading Jeff and Jane kissing to 21 Pilots. But yeah, the funny thing is, a lot of the music I'm into now, I got into from watching it in creepypasta music videos, like Get Scared. It's one of my favorite bands. Even though I haven't listened to them more recently, it's like anything from 5 years and back. I just get obsessed with those songs. But yeah, I got into their song Don't Be Afraid of the Sun, or whatever it was, from what was it? Tiki Toby music video. The OGs know which one I'm talking about because I think it had like millions of views. Anyways, so I got into creepypastas, and in case you're wondering, yes, I did have a crush on Jeff the Killer, and no, I'm not proud of it, but I think it's important to be vulnerable and open yourself up online to an extent, so that way people really know who you are, and that's who I am. I am somebody who looked at Jeff the Killer, looked at his disgusting carved up potato face, and went, that's what I want, so that's on the table. But thankfully I've moved on a little bit, because now it's no longer age appropriate. And I was into creepypastas like that, and then eventually I got into the less trendy creepypastas and more of the, that's actually an interesting story, you know? Not just about people designing characters, hoping that they'll get a bunch of fan art and stuff, trying to appeal to 12-year-olds. Nothing wrong with appealing to 12-year-olds, even though, according to the target demographics of my YouTube channel, all of y'all are, like, in your 30s, which is cool. Cool. I mean, I can swear. I can say, like, ass, and I won't get copyrighted, or copyrighted. I won't get, God, what's it called when they just axe your YouTube channel? Anyways, imagine getting copyrighted for saying ass. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. Sorry. I have been very busy this morning, all over the place. So I was into the creepypastas, right? And so I got into Ben Drowned. And so I'm gonna, like, sexily flash my shoulder on here. So I have, oh my god, I went the wrong direction. I got this tattoo on my, well, I wanted to get it on my 18th, but I had to get it about a month after because of availability issues. So it got me into Major's Mask. At first, I was just, oh, the creepypasta is cool. I like the video where the guy edits the Major's Mask, make it look all spooky. Obviously, I didn't really believe in it. But the sad part is, I think Ben Drowned and the Major's Mask videos are what really got me into horror. Because I loved the lore of it. I loved how accepting and crazy and weird the fandom was, and how they were unashamed of it. And it was like a community for me, almost. Even though I just lurked on subreddits and stuff and didn't really post much, it was like I'd found other people who understood. So yeah, and I went from Majora's Mask to Five Nights at Freddy's. That came out in 2014. I still love that series, in case you can't tell, based on my playthrough of the fan game, Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese. You should check that out. I should have pointed up, not back there. There's nothing behind me. I had to check. So I got really into Five Nights at Freddy's. That got me into real life horror. And by that, I don't mean like gore videos or stuff, though we've all watched them just out of curiosity, I think. Into things like submechanophobia, thalassophobia, things that involve real phobias in real life, where there's, spooky videos and stuff like that. So I had really bad trypophobia when I was younger. It still kind of gets me a little bit, but it was like I would just see stuff and get so weirded out that it's like I think about it forever. So yeah, and then that just evolved into, I ended up getting really into the Halloween franchise. I got into Dead by Daylight. There's a bunch of different movie things I've always been really big on. My biggest phase thing, as in I have a bunch of posters. I have this awesome painted record with Michael Myers' face on it, but I got really into the Halloween movies, and I still love them. I think it's a great example of what horror should be. Ridiculous and fun, and also takes itself a little seriously, but not too much. The whole thing that I like about horror is, well, there's a lot of things I like about horror, but it's that it doesn't try as hard as other movie genres, if that makes any sense whatsoever. You don't have to overthink everything about it. Sometimes it's just cheesy, and sometimes it's just ridiculous, and sometimes it's just gross, and sometimes it's just taking cliches from other movies, and sometimes it's only made for the fans, and that's what's cool about it. One of the best things about the horror community is just that everyone is so accepting and so understanding of other types of horror. It's not something where it's like, for the record, I like John Wick, but it's like not like John Wick fans beating each other up over, oh, this scene wasn't good enough, or oh, that scene wasn't good enough, or micro-managing and thinking too hard about all the little things. It's like, horror people aren't generally like that. I mean, I'm sure some movie critics are a little too much, but it's about understanding that humans are effed up. And sometimes we just want to watch something where people die or good things don't happen, or we have to think about these unimaginable, terrible things and then go, wow, I'm so glad that didn't happen to me. It's not about, like, for instance, if you watch, like, a romance movie, and you go home and you look at your partner, like, sitting in the kitchen in their undies eating a pack of Cheetos, and you're like, ew. I watch a horror movie and I go home and I'm like, I'm so glad there's no one with a chainsaw in my shower. Oh, God, today could have been so much worse. So, yeah, I think that's sort of the timeline. And where I'm at right now, I like Dead by Daylight, indie horror games. Oh, I did watch a lot of indie horror Let's Plays on YouTube. In case you can't tell, that's kind of why I like doing it myself. But, yeah, I like everything related to horror, I think. I mean, I can't think of anything related to horror that I don't like, except for there's always going to be a few nuts, a couple bad apples, but the same for any community and any fandom. And that's just something to accept. It doesn't mean that you should not like horror or feel ashamed of liking horror, because there's always, like, someone like a school shooter who comes up with an excuse using a movie they saw. There'll always be excuses, and there'll always be bad people coming up with excuses for those actions they've taken. And I think it's important to realize that that doesn't portray... People are responsible for their own actions, and it's not fair to blame it on something else. Like, be a man. Take the fall. Anyways, that got really off topic, and this was a long video, but I hope you guys kind of have more of an understanding of how I got into horror, kind of stuff that I like, and I hope you all have a good day, or good night. I will see, oh, there's my dog. I will see you next week for part 3 of Five Nights at Chucky's, and peace. Sorry if that was too rambly. That's like, I don't ever take notes.